2013, the year of the Harlem Shake, the launch of the PlayStation 4, and the release of BeamNG's very first tech demo. But it wasn't the only car sandbox game to see the light of day that year. For some of you, this might be a nostalgic memory, while the rest are probably wondering why I'm showing next car game footage in a BeamNG video. If next car game doesn't ring a bell, that's probably because 1 year later, it was renamed to Wreckfest. Now imagine my reaction when I opened BeamNG after updating to the newest version and saw this. Update 0.37 adds props and missions that make it feel like you're reliving the early days of Wreckfest all over again. I could almost hear my parents yelling at me to turn off the game. Sweet memories. This update brings 9 new missions, 5 of which involve some kind of stunt driving. These missions were designed to show off the destruction props that were either remastered or newly added. Everything from trampolines to spinners and even a hamster wheel featuring the T-Rex mascot we already know from Johnson Valley and the D-Series interior. At first glance, these additions might not seem like a big deal. After all, destroying vehicles is already one of BeamNG's main appeals and the reason most people bought the game in the first place. But I'd argue this update pushes it into new dimensions. Here's the interesting part. If you look at the Steam page or the official website, car damage has never been BeamNG's main selling point. It's mentioned and showcased in trailers, sure, but the game is marketed as an incredibly realistic driving game with near limitless possibilities. The soft body engine simulation of every single component of a vehicle is highlighted before its ability to create insanely realistic car damage.
We have like a bunch of different people in the company, like the physics people. They want to create the most realistic physics simulator that's ever been invented. And then we have like the vehicle side, which I could talk a lot about since I'm the vehicle lead. We just want to create the, the most realistic vehicle simulation that we possibly could. And this includes putting in all the tiny details.
The goal of the BeamNG team has always been to create a car simulation with true-to-life behavior that authentically recreates the excitement of real-world driving.
So it's a physics engine that's completely different than, the other video games out there. And that's because the forces actually travel through from like the wheel into the shocks into the body.
Crash physics are simply a side effect of that dedication to realism.
And that's why, like the crashing is super nice, or like when the vehicle jumps and lands, like the forces pass through the vehicle really, really nicely. And, if you watch the YouTubers or slow motion, you can see the whole thing jiggle just like in real life. And, we want to take that experience and our passion and share it with everybody else to inspire people, inspire people to get into cars and, show them what it's really like to drive these things and really how these vehicles will react.
If you've been following my channel for a while, you know my favorite line. BeamNG is more than just a crash simulator. It honestly hurts a little when people reduce it to nothing more than that. But even I think that the gamification of soft body physics, which is basically what this update does more than ever, is a fantastic way to appeal to a wider audience. New racing games come out every year, but the more crowded the genre gets, the less soul and character many of them tend to have. This is especially true for racing sims. Unless you're a hardcore sim racer, they often lack that special something that keeps you coming back day after day. That's why I believe that whether update 0.37 feels like a nod to Wreckfest or not, it's exactly the right move to make BeamNG stand out more than it already does. Even though BeamNG and Wreckfest serve slightly different niches, there's still a big overlap in their player bases. Wreckfest leans more towards a casual simcade experience, while BeamNG is a full-on simulation. Still, looking back at Wreckfest's past might give us some clues about where BeamNG could be headed. Bugbear, the developers behind the Flat Out series, went straight to the fans with a playable demo in 2013 instead of going the traditional publisher route, just like BeamNG. The demo focused on showing off the new damage system. It wasn't as advanced as BeamNG's physics, but for a flat-out racing title, it was groundbreaking. In 2014, the game officially rebranded as Wreckfest, and over the next few years, updates slowly expanded it into a full package. Early access development dragged on for years with long gaps between updates and lots of players wondering if it would ever be finished. But in 2018, Wreckfest finally launched as a full game, with console releases following in 2019. And this year, in 2025, we actually got the sequel, Wreckfest 2. Even though its damage system is nowhere near as detailed as BeamNG's, Wreckfest proved that a racing game like it could still succeed as a complete game with a progression system. As I already mentioned, we cannot assume that BeamNG's development will go just like Wreckfest's. However, considering the parallels in their first years, it doesn't seem too far-fetched either. Both games started with a tech demo for the public, followed by a long early access phase that is still ongoing in BeamNG's case. I don't believe BeamNG will exit early access anytime soon. There are so many things in the pipeline, and given that it's a sandbox, early access is the way to go in my opinion anyway. I do think that when the career mode has a proper story and expansions in other areas, in other words, when it could stand alone as a complete game, they might consider a full release, possibly alongside a console release. That would likely require a few years of pausing new feature development and focusing solely on optimization though. Due to its sandbox nature, a sequel like Wreckfest 2 seems rather unlikely for BeamNG, but releasing the career mode as a separate game doesn't seem like a totally implausible idea. At this point, I'd like to mention that I'm a big fan of how Assetto Corsa Evo prompts you to choose between career and open mode before even launching into the actual main menus, so I'd love to see a similar approach in the future for BeamNG. Let's recap. BeamNG and Wreckfest share a similar past, but Bugbear decided on a more typical approach, while BeamNG remains an early access title to this day. Even though BeamNG's player count is already extremely high, releasing it on other platforms and expanding the game with more gamified aspects, like in this update, as well as lengthening the playtime of the career mode, will make it appeal to an even wider audience. Have fun exploring update 0.37. See ya next time!